So, on Washington's hottest weekend on record, I decided to match blazing temperatures with blazing speed and see F9 The Fast Saga, directed by Justin Lin and starring Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, John Cena, and a Yggdrasil-sized family tree. And it was fun and frustrating. We open in 1989 as Jack Toretto Sr. makes a pit stop in a heated stock car race. A young Dominic gives his pop some pointers about the competition, and the man reciprocates, advising his son that it's not about being the stronger man, it's about being the bigger one. Scarcely does the next lap resume, though, and a fellow racer edges Toretto off the track, sending him flying to crash and burn before a helpless Dom's eyes. Cut to present day, where Dom and Letty are raising their son on a remote farm. When an unexpected car interrupts the tranquility, the parents arm themselves, but it's just Roman, Tej, and Ramsey. They come bearing bad news, however. A video from Mr. Nobody, transmitted just as his plane transporting Cypher was hijacked. Dom balks at his friend's plea for aid. After all, Brian retired when he had a kid, but he changes his mind after spotting a familiar crucifix in the background of a distress call. The team trace Mr. Nobody's signal to a crash site in Central America, where they find a mysterious device buried in the wreckage. A shootout with local authorities ensues, forcing our heroes to make a break for the border. As they do, a driver intercepts Dom and steals the device. The pair lock eyes, and in that moment, Dom realizes the master criminal they're up against, who they'll soon have to unite with friends new and old to stop from assembling a weapon of world domination, is none other than Jacob Toretto, Dom's long-lost brother. At 20 years old, the Fast and Furious franchise is now nearly old enough to drive and drink. In those 2 decades, it's come a long way, from a gearhead Point Break with a name lifted from some old Roger Corman flick to what's essentially Mission Impossible with more B-roll of stick shifting. My relationship with the series is complicated, or maybe just shallow. I've never been a car guy, so for years I wrote it off as cinematic fodder for dudes with a mini-fridge in their garage. It was when I saw the Super Bowl teaser for Furious 7, however, in which Vin Diesel drives a car out of a skyscraper, into another skyscraper, and then into a third skyscraper, but I thought, perhaps I've made an error in judgment. I subsequently watched every film and Hobbs and Shaw, though unlike some of my peers, I didn't revisit the whole box set to get up to speed, settling instead for a breeze through Wikipedia, where it's worth noting that every plot summary specifies the precise model of car that people drive, with links.
1995 Mitsubishi
Nissan
Eclipse,
Skyline GTR
Mazda
R34,
7,
2001 Nissan modified
Toyota
S57,
1999
Hummer
Chevrolet
Chevrolet
Monte Carlo.
To my great pleasure, Fast 9 gets right to the action quicker than ever. It knows what we're all here for nowadays, and it wastes nary a second in delivering. Stealth be damned, these people will drive a convoy of luxury vehicles and tanks into a military outpost. The film is also full of more gorgeous, expansive shots of international locales, from the Caspian Sea to Scotland, and Lin's camera is just as capable at capturing the blistering car chases which comprise each set piece. There's CGI aplenty, but practical effects are regularly employed as well, most notably in a sequence where the team flees across a minefield, explosions clipping bumpers and sending their pursuers flying. As much as any thrilling cinematography, though, the main draw with latter-day Fasts has been seeing what new star will join our players. This time around, it's John Cena. Cena has been more meme than man for most of his on-screen career, with pretty much every slot in his filmography since The Marine riffing on his intimidating yet genial persona. With that back catalog then, seeing him revert to heel status, perpetual scowl and all, is actually a relative novelty. His burly build and square jaw fit right in with the rest of the heavies who have staffed prior entries, and the brawl between him and Vin is the best showdown of the film that doesn't take place on 4 wheels. Yet, as with Uncharted 4, the biggest leap on display here is neither a man off a roof nor a car off a cliff, but the logic of how the main character has a brother who we've never heard of till now. The simplest answer is that Cena was in every Fast movie, you just couldn't see him. But save for Mia and Letty, the rest of Dom's compadres are appropriately alarmed by this reveal. With that in mind, while the film touts the array of ludicrous stunts one's come to expect from a Fast installment, its most distinctive touch is a staggering of flashbacks, across which we see a 20-something Dom and Jacob's sibling rivalry emerge in the wake of their father's death. Diesel and Cena Jr. act and look the part as well as they need to. In the former's case, not since Snowden has a low voice been so prominent a performance tick, but at least we didn't get some Irishmanly deepfakes instead. Maybe the producers accepted this was one bit of backstory that exposition couldn't cover, maybe they just realized the cast needed some young faces to draw in a teen crowd and set up a couple prequels. Either way, these segments can't hope to make up for lost time, but Jacob's rocky relationship with Dom sets a solid cornerstone for a film built on, say it with me now,
family.
The film also brings racing's relevance back to the forefront. Whether invoking a real-life tragedy along the way is tactful or not, these scenes really do help continue to distinguish the franchise from its contemporaries. We even get one more literally straightforward street race between the young Torettos, complete with a last-minute nitrous boost. It's a pure and simple throwback that honors Viserys' lineage while also igniting the immediate conflict, and for that I gotta give it props. Charlize Theron returns as Cypher, swapping her troubling white girl dreads for a Mo Howard cut and an elusive mystique for the classic captured evil genius translucent prison cell. Her role is largely to exposit Jacob's motivations by taunting him with psychoanalysis, needling how he wants to be better, faster, stronger than Dom, and also to acknowledge how odd it is for Cena and Diesel to be fraternal brothers. Fast and Furious is lauded for having one of the most nonchalantly diverse lineups of any Hollywood mainstay, but credit is also due for keeping women of a certain age well employed for action antics. Stunt doubles aside, name another major motion picture that has 4 women over 40 kicking ass and taking names. Now, per usual, the bad guys have marksmanship skills that make stormtroopers look like Hawkeye, but this time, our heroes actually make light of their implausible invulnerability. A running joke is that Roman is openly suspicious of how they've all been on so many crazy adventures yet never get seriously injured. Later, Cypher teases a captor by observing that if this was a movie, this would be the moment where the villain has an unexpected setback. It's a thread of self-aware humor on which Viserys has never yanked, and for a while I was worried the story would devolve into the subversive elbowing that's hobbled many a modern sequel. Fortunately, it skirts around such jabs in favor of keeping the mood light, sincere, and at arm's length from metafiction or metahumans. It looks inward at its own lore, and while the reflection is a real funhouse mirror, the effort develops the characters instead of denigrating them. I especially liked when Jacob summons Dom to a mansion where women in lavish white outfits dance seductively about the yard, and one of his lackeys smirks, "This is your kind of party, isn't it, Dom?" It riffs on the series' fratty roots, but also makes sense in-universe as the dig of a bitter, affluent foe. That and some ironic beats really work. For one, after years of action sequences centered on skilled drivers tearing up the blacktop, it's a stroke of genius to have a calamitous scene where that one member of Dom's crew who doesn't know how to drive needs to get behind the wheel. Another new touch is one that may seem especially strange, but makes perfect sense in hindsight. Magnets. Specifically, powerful electromagnets, which the squad acquire around the midpoint and somehow jury-rig to create a fleet of magnetomobiles. Now, the cars don't even have to touch each other to fly around. The creative chaos that this unleashes once multiple vehicles and reversed polarities get involved is such a giddy spectacle that I really hope it comes back in the future, if only for the childlike running Hot Wheels around on the floor glee of it all. It's a better application of the gimmick than 6 Underground, at least. Man, though, you just hope nobody in range has fillings. Or a pin in their knee. Unfortunately, but not surprisingly, the script traffics in pat platitudes and running more circles around its themes than NASCAR. The worst thing you can do to a Toretto is take away their family. You gotta make peace with the past if you want hope for the future. No one outruns their past. Nobody's holding their breath for Aaron Sorkin's Fast and Furious, but at over 2 hours of runtime, you start wishing for some more insightful dialogue. It's also a tad arbitrary with audience refreshers. One friend redundantly reminds Dom that Cypher is the woman who killed the mother of your child, but other relationships are implied at best if you didn't catch a previously on YouTube compilation. The gnarled timeline doesn't make recollection any easier. After seeing Lucas Black portray a teenager 10 years after the fact in Furious 7, I genuinely wasn't sure if it was him playing the graying jet technician Dom's team taps for some gear. My man must have caught a connecting flight on the island from Old on his way back from Tokyo. The MacGuffin this time around, a 3-piece doodad that's part of Project Ares, also feels a touch too similar in threatened execution to Cypher's nuke nabbing from F8. After Furious 7 went all in with spy action and Fate debuted apocalyptic stakes, the series seems to have wedged itself between a rock and a conceptual hard place. It hasn't yet mustered the audacity to go full sci-fi, but its nos-chugging, hip-hop blasting aesthetic means we're unlikely to meet a nemesis who just wants to, say, manipulate the stock market. Which also means that we get more hacking into mainframes, and shutting down the satellite uplink, and chasing the biometric signature of... Is it possible for something to be exciting and boring at the same time? The raucous escalation from its origins just isn't innovative anymore, and it doesn't have the lush color palette or out-and-out comedy of Hobbs and Shaw's sidequel to compensate, though it tries mightily to replicate that film's tone, with a greater focus than ever on banter between Roman and Tej. Alternatively, post-John Wick, it's hard not to expect just a little more blood and cursing in your movie about badass secret agents blowing each other up. But that theme park ride ain't gonna market itself. To that end, and as if there was any doubt, Fast has morphed into a superhero expanded universe in its own right. In the aforementioned fist fight, Dom gets his head put through a lintel and Jacob punches through a wall like Agent Smith, and neither man so much as needs to catch his breath afterwards. So powerful and protective are cars in this universe that there's no distance or angle from which one can land on them that it isn't considered a veritable pillow compared to just hitting the ground a few feet below. I've seen more fall damage in a Doom game, but the parallels go beyond mere invincibility. Dom's dilemma at the outset, whether to relax in a cabin with his wife and child or help his friends save the planet, is pretty much that of Iron Man in Endgame, while Cypher's confinement recalls many an imprisoned comic book maniac. I'd compare the quest to stop Jacob from putting Project Ares together to Infinity War, but to be fair, segmented artifacts of formidable power were a hallowed trope well before 2018. The real issue, though, is why this wasn't the plot of a Fast and Furious video game instead of, well...
They want to play with fire? Then let's turn up the heat. Watch out! These escorts are packing.
To top it all off, an imposing vehicle gets vertically flipped like the semi in The Dark Knight, and Dom even gets in a Bane-tier backbreaker on a goon before tugging a pair of chains to bring a dilapidated ceiling down Kratos style. With the last of those in particular, it's really hard to not see this installment as Vin continuing his renowned feud with Dwayne Johnson by attempting to one-up the ex-co-star's feats of strength. The difference is that when Luke Hobbs shrugs off a riot bullet or briefly restrains a helicopter by hand like Captain America, you buy it because, 1, dear God, and 2, that movie swiftly established itself as cartoonishly silly, what with cyborgs and Ryan Reynolds and asking us to believe that Vanessa Kirby grew up in the 70s. The mainline Fasts have gotten plenty goofy, but even putting aside Diesel's comparatively humble build, the schism presented by H&S has yet to officially reconcile itself with Vin-centric entries. In the meantime, I didn't miss Johnson as much as I thought I would, but that's not a knock against The Rock. Just a testament to the malleability of this cast. And speaking of change, the weakest link in this film is that it tries to lump its contemporary spy shenanigans in with past events. Han Solo was back, proving once and for all that everyone's death here is Schrodinger approved. I'd like to have not had this spoiled by the trailers, but what else is new? We're told that not only did Han fake his death to join Mr. Nobody, but Jacob was working with the guy as well for years before Dom got involved. Kurt Russell plays Mr. Nobody as a pretty coy SOB, sure, but really that wouldn't have come up in conversation when he enlisted their services? And way to devalue the whole dramatic linchpin of Furious 7 while you're at it. What, did Han exploit the mother of all coincidences and escape through a manhole located right under his abruptly T-boned car? Are we sure Kurt's character from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 didn't pull off this disappearing act? It's recontextualizing a scene that's already been recontextualized, creating a mandala of lies by omission. Cypher smirks that she should have hired Jacob instead of Dom before, but that lampshade can scarcely cover the 1,000-watt bulb of this retcon. Mr. Nobody himself is now missing, presumed dead, but that's clearly never stopped any of his compatriots, so I'm sure they'll explain all of this when he next strolls back into frame. Either way, there are archaeological digs that require less backfill than this mythology. In an attempt to make this world feel larger, they've just shrunk it, compressing once varied connections to the same handful of Black Ops outfits that pull the strings in any comparable franchise. Okay, stray thoughts. A good chunk of story is about the falling out between Dom and Jake following their father's passing, and whether Jake was to blame. Unless I missed something, though, this question is never answered. At first it's a mystery, then Dom thinks it was murder, and then Jake confesses it was a murder-suicide? Because their dad was going to throw the race? On whose orders? One would think that whoever actually slammed into the car would be the object of ire, but after young Dom thrashes that guy for besmirching the Toretto name, he's curiously absent from proceedings. If they're setting up an even bigger, more personal antagonist for Fast 10, fair enough, but then the narrative has never been so shameless with a Hail Mary. Jacob isn't the only new relative to whom we're introduced, as we learn that Han took in a surrogate daughter from a couple who were iced by rival agents. I want to say the more the merrier, but since her DNA signature is the key to Project Ares, she basically functions as a plot device, and I don't think we even learn her name until like the last scene. At this rate, I'm going to have an easier time remembering the names of all the dwarves in The Hobbit. Of course, everybody makes nice with Jake once he gets betrayed, so Cypher can have her I'll-do-it-myself moment and become the tip-top villain again for like 10 minutes. I guess she got deciphered. At one point, Roman's car is wedged nose first into a crevice over an explosive, which puts him in a vertically precarious vehicle not unfamiliar for a Universal protagonist. In a daring bit of post-2020 product placement, Corona does appear, although the logo is a real blink and you'll miss it. I guess they could have always replaced the bottle with Christopher Plummer. Helen Mirren as Queenie Shaw chuckles to Dom, glad I'm not the only one with a family full of eccentrics. And is that an Oasis reference? Well, we've definitely seen him going down the hall faster than a cannonball. So, wait, if Jacob was on Mr. Nobody's plane, how and why did he end up at sea level later? Did he hop on board and then leave to pick up the pieces? I guess he is a big guy. There's a very confusing scene where Dom gets taken into custody by who we're led to believe are Interpol agents summoned by Jacob, but then it turns out they're all sexy ladies led by Cardi B, who Dom knows. He didn't apparently plan that far ahead, so where did these girls come from? Where did they go?
Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
Roman refers to Edinburgh as looking like Harry Potter World, which Having been there, I can definitely confirm. Roman also detects a pair of Jacob's grunts incognito by spotting their cauliflower ears, so let's hope the gang never has to try and sniff out the opposition at a wrestling match. Dom and Jacob spend a little while jumping between the tops of vehicles during a fight, a martial arts tactic known as the reverse Frogger. Jacob's right-hand man has this whole exchange with Cypher where they compare each other to Star Wars characters. Original trilogy references have been a bingo free space for comedy since at least Clerks, sure, but I'd be shooting some side-eye if I were Disney right now. But to be fair, both series can agree on one thing.
No one's ever really gone.
They did it! They went to outer space! I heard the rumors, I had my suspicions, but still...
Space!
Granted, it's a little convenient that there seems to only be one satellite in orbit, but at least they didn't crash into Elon Musk's Tesla up there. Meanwhile, on Earth... that's just something that you can say now. Vin Diesel swings a car from a rope by getting it stuck in the wheel well. Also, with Brian rolling up at the end, is this the longest that an actor who passed away has continued as part of live-action media? Given that Dom's faith is one of the most consistent yet unexplored aspects of his character, presumably to keep the blue-collar good vibes while not scaring away secular viewers, maybe they'll be taking the highway to hell by Fast 10? If I made it through all the scrapes these folks did and walked away unscathed, I'd definitely be a believer. Keeping up the video game-like insanity, the movie even ends with having to flip the enemy on its back with a new weapon to expose its weak point for massive damage. And when Roman and Tej float up to a space station for rescue after smashing the satellite, one of the cosmonauts says that in their spacesuits they look like minions. You can just never help yourself, Universal, can you? Overall, I'd give this film an 8 out of 10. It's trite and predictable in its own right after so many attempts to top itself, and that same overstuffed drama makes plot beats alternately confusing and caveman brain obvious. Regardless, the action is comprehensible, thrilling, and clever. The soundtrack is banging, and I love the actors' enthusiasm and the vibrant globetrotting. The absurd yet unfailing sincerity about the power of togetherness helps warm the heart of what's otherwise a spiritual continuation of XXX at this point, and pragmatically, I can't fault the spin-off potential it fosters. And hey, at least Scott Eastwood didn't show up again. Now, to transition away from capping each review with a COVID-19 warning, I'd like to take a moment to spotlight the particular theater which I attended. I went to the Regal in Lakewood, Washington, which, despite being deceptively impenetrable beyond a dozen exit-only signs, is really impressive megaplex. The concessions boast a magnificent soaring ceiling, the halls to the screens have that cozy yet stark liminal aura which I always appreciate, and there's even a couple of timely arcade games. The trailers here were a deluge of previews from numerous studios in what I can only assume was an all-cylinders push to get ads for movies, period, back into a collective consciousness. There was No Time to Die, Free Guy, Escape Room Tournament of Champions, or as I like to call it, Zoomer Saw, The Suicide Squad, M. Night Shyamalan's Old, Sing 2, Snake Eyes, G.I. Joe Origins, because that subtitle worked out so well for X-Men, and just all the Marvel Phase 4 stuff. Strangely though, no Jurassic World Dominion. It'd pain the Toretto clan to hear it, I'm sure, but ironically, I actually watched this alone, without family. Nevertheless, I was able to share in the kind of communal reactions I miss from public moviegoing. Jubilation at seeing something deliberately, fantastically absurd. By the finale, my audience was hooting and hollering, and I was grinning from ear to ear at the chaos unfolding before us. So long as the Delta variant doesn't rear its ugly head in my neighborhood, I'm looking forward to doing the same thing very soon as the next wave of summer blockbusters crests. Until then, here's to living life a quarter mile at a time, but also celebrating the friends and loved ones who have got your back, wherever these roads take us.